now. Our reporters.
And they tweeted
Complex.
Okay.
They were the impact of the project. It's going to be. So, okay.
All right. All right.
Public line back open inside.
IT support.
Mr. Chairman?
Do we know if we have everyone back on that is calling in?
I know I heard Curator Phillips. I can do a quick roll call if you like of the board.
Let's do a quick roll call, just an informal roll call to make sure we're all on.
Okay. Curator Chapman?
Yes.
Curator Farmer?
Yes.
Curator Graham is here.
Yes.
Curator Lehman?
Yes.
Curator Phillips?
Yes.
Okay. Curator Snowden?
Yes.
Okay. And Curator Steelman?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Having verified that all curators are participating now, we'll declare the Board of Curators meeting back in public session, and we're going to turn it back over to the Health Affairs Committee. We have one action item, and Curator Phillips, if you would like to lead the committee in that action, it's item number 2 under the Health Affairs Committee.
Sure.
Corporate integrity agreement.
It sounds like somebody is on lots of papers rustling. Whoever that is might want to put it on mute. Oh, that's good. So, again, this is Chair Phillips of the Health Affairs Committee. We've now had a chance to review and ask questions about the resolution that's being proposed with respect to the MU health compliance. And I think for the benefit of any that are listening in the public session who don't have access to the motion, although it's a little bit long, I probably ought to read it into the record. So I, as chair, move that the Health Affairs Committee of the Board of Curators of the University of Missouri has made reasonable inquiry into the operations of the compliance program of MU Health, sometimes referred to as University of Missouri Health System, or UMHS, including the performance of the Chief Compliance Officer and the Compliance Committee. Based on its inquiry and review, the Health Affairs Committee has concluded that to the best of its knowledge, UMHS has implemented an effective compliance program to meet federal health care program requirements and the obligations of the Corporate Integrity Agreement. The Secretary of the Board of Curators is authorized to prepare a separate form of this resolution to be signed by each member of the Health Affairs Committee. That's my motion, and I'm looking for a second.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Cindy, would you please call the roll of the committee?
Mr. Ashworth?
Yes.
Curator Lehman?
Yes.
Curator Phillips?
Yes.
Curator Snowden?
Yes.
Okay. You have all votes in favor.
Chairman Graham, I believe that it is a committee delegated responsibility and authority. If that's correct, then I would now move to adjourn the Health Affairs Committee meeting.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Ashworth?
Yes.
Curator Lehman?
Yes.
Curator Phillips?
Yes.
And Curator Snowden?
Yes.
Chairman Graham, I believe that concludes the Chairman Graham, I believe that concludes the agenda of the Health Affairs Committee.
It does, and thank you, John, for making yourself available. We will now continue to the next item on the agenda for the public session, and that is a report from the Finance Committee chaired by Curator Steelman, and the committee members of which are Curator Chapman, Curator Lehman, and Curator Snowden. Mr. Steelman, you can take over.
If I can just say, and I'm going to try to make this pretty brief, but there's been a lot of discussion among curators, and Ryan has done a lot of work answering some questions on what's going to be today, which is the submission of the university's fiscal year 2019 state capital appropriations request to the state government. Curator Chapman, in particular, has raised some issues, which, one, are good questions, but two, I agree with his point of view, and one reason I wanted Curator Phillips back on is that I wanted to point out that the questions raised by Curator Chapman in the Finance Committee have echoed the concerns regarding prioritization that Curator Phillips, among others, has echoed for the past 2 or 3 years. Now, the reason I say this is that this will be the last, I hope, capital's appropriation request done in this manner by the board. And even this request is not the old way of doing business. We're down to 4 capital improvements requests. It's hard to understand unless you've seen them. And Ryan, you might want to send sometime the old way of doing things to the curators, where we would have multiple requests. So even this one has been pared down and is in fact prioritized. And I hope, and we'll ask President Choi to make a comment, or Ryan, one of the two, on the prioritization even within here. But this is my long way of saying the working group, which is Curator Snowden and myself, Ryan Rapp, Rick Banyek. Who am I forgetting, Ryan?
That's the group. You've got the group.
Okay. Has met. And I want to give a real appreciation to Rick and to Ryan. But Rick has really done some yeoman's work on this, and I don't want to get everybody's the thinking that it's all perfect, but we're going to have a presentation in September, and I hope, Mr. Chairman, that we have significant time so that the board can discuss and maybe even amend, but I don't know if they want to. Rick and Ryan have done some really good work that I think will totally revise and change the method by which we handle capital appropriations, and that will have far-reaching consequences, not just on our appropriations request to the state, but how we handle, how we raise money, that will establish lines of control and authority. And so what I'm asking the committee for is a little patience today, and saying I think we should support this request, but this will be done differently starting in September, I hope.
Marcy.
So if nobody has I can't hear you, Marcy. Marcy, I can't hear you.
You should be able to. I'm on Zoom. Will you have a proposal for a new policy to be considered by the board in September for action, or just study?
No, I hope, let me say this, I hope in our timeline that Rick and Ryan have developed will actually look towards implementing the new process starting in October. So I look, Rick, who is behind you, and Ryan, who I can't see right now, but my plan is and they're driving the boat. I mean, I will say this, they've put a lot of work and effort into this. But my plan, and I hope their plan, is to have a presentation for discussion, amendment, implementation, and approval by the board. Rick, I'm looking at you. Don't you think we can have that ready?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what my hope was, so that's good.
Yeah.
And I think the plan will allow, we're going to make a recommendation to the president. That'll allow for us then in August, September to go around and discuss that with others. So we'd be prepared then in September to have a discussion, and not only have a discussion, but actually approve implementation of a new approach.
So anything else by anybody before we move on to Ryan?
This is Curator Chapman. I have I'll
I'll have several questions for Ryan, but I'd like him to do his presentation first.
Okay, sure.
But
Okay.
I think that was well said, Dave. A good characterization of discussions.
Will we have the guidelines or what we're going to be asked to perhaps adopt before the week before the meeting in September? In other words, will we have, week or 10, more than a week, maybe 10 or days or 2 weeks, see what the proposal?
Yeah, I think that is a great question, John. Ryan and Rick, what I would like to do, even though it is subject to change, is when you have the proposal ready to discuss around the different campuses, that it be submitted to the curators at that time, which will be a couple months probably in advance. Ryan, would you agree?
Yeah, with our timeline, we should have a draft ready for comment in the middle of August. And actually, John, our plan was to allow everyone time to look at it, and then we were going to actually reach out to get feedback from everyone on that. So I think there'll be plenty of time to look at it and provide feedback before it's presented in September.
Good.
That's great. Thanks.
John, I will say again, my view, and I let Phil and everybody else speak for themselves, but my view is to have time for significant curator input prior to a final draft, and then even that final draft will be subject to discussion and potential amendment at the September meeting if Marcy will allow us the time.
We will.
Okay, Ryan, I'm sorry. Ryan, I am so shy and I am so unwilling to speak that I've used up your time, but I would like now to have Vice President Rapp review the 2019 capital appropriations request to the state.
Thank you, Curator Steelman. Just to remind everyone, we have to submit our request to the state by the end of this month. And it really is important that we make this request to ensure we have access to state funding if it were to become available. Over the last 15 years, it has been sporadic and unexpected when we receive state funding. So while we may not sit here today and think there's a significant likelihood of us receiving state funding, if we don't submit a request, we could not access funding if it did become available. The projects included in our request are our highest priority projects, and it includes our highest priority project in TPMC, and the other projects really represent our top renovation and infrastructure needs for each of our campuses. And then this is just on the second slide, just to remind you that facilities really are critical to our success. David's already talked about the capital strategy working group. I'm excited about what we're going to have discussed through August and September. We know that we're in a different environment, and we're going to have to think about funding the academic building needs for our campuses differently. Historically, we've viewed this as the responsibility of the state, and I think moving forward, we have to think about the state as part of the solution, but not the only solution. As we discussed in April, this is going to require us to look at what we can do on our own. It's going to be through no one single solution, but a combination of things such as possible facilities fees, leveraging our own institutional resources, such as the central bank, looking at taking old buildings offline, improving our space utilization, targeted fundraising, and also thinking about public-private partnerships or asset monetization as it relates to non-strategic capital assets. If you go to slide 1-10, this just gives you an overview of the size and scope of our facilities footprint. When it comes to state capital requests, we're only allowed to make requests for our education and general buildings, or what I consider our academic buildings. As you can see, we have over 490, we almost have 500 buildings, over 15,000 gross square feet, and the current replacement value of that portfolio is a little over $5.6 billion. The next slide, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. It just provides you with an idea of the age of our buildings. The construction age, shown in red, is based on when the building was erected. Shown in blue is the renovation age of the building, and it's adjusted based on updates that we've made to buildings. As you can see on this chart, much of our space, it is old. If you go to the next slide on 1-11, and we take a closer look at the condition of our academic buildings, we typically look at the facilities conditions needs index. A lower FC&I represents a building with fewer deficiencies. If we flip over to 1-12, this provides you a breakdown of our buildings. Our goal is to have an overall FC&I under 0.3. Based on our most current study, over 42% of our buildings have an FC&I above our target of 0.3. On the next slide, this just articulates even more the needs, significant needs we have. We know we have over a $1.6 billion backlog. I think we have to be careful that we break that down into the different buckets. And as you can see, we have significant needs that really are critical and immediate or need to be met within 1 year. And as I kind of previously discussed, for us to address this, it's going to take a combination of strategies. Moving to the next slide, it really highlights the challenge that we would see over the next 10 years. If we did nothing and we just continued on the path we were on, we would see this problem grow exponentially, and all of our campuses would be above our target of 0.3. That being said, we don't plan to do nothing. We already have things in place that we're doing, and I think we'll have a more robust discussion about this in September. The following slides are really just providing an overview of the request for each campus. For MU, it includes our number one priority project in TPMC. I want to note, we are working on a marketing strategy for this project to share with our stakeholders, including the state, donors, and industry partners. This project would not only let us address a new facilities project to grow research, but let us tackle $37.3 million in deferred maintenance by replacing and renovating other academic buildings on the campus. On the next slide, we have Spencer Chemistry, and this is the number one renovation project for UMKC. It did go through our current capital planning process. It would address $17.7 million in deferred maintenance. And phase 2 would allow us to complete what we were not able to complete in phase 1. And it would add additional teaching and research space. Many of our students at UMKC go through this building. So it's not just our chemistry and biological sciences students that go through the building. Many of our professional students in pharmacy, medicine, and nursing also take courses in this building. On the next slide for Missouri S&T, this is Schrank Hall, and this is the number one academic building project for S&T. It's consistent with what they put forward in their master plan that was approved this spring. And I believe almost every student at Missouri S&T takes a course in this building. The final space consolidation and infrastructure project at UMSL is the number one renovation project for UMSL. It's also consistent with their strategy to improve their infrastructure and reduce their space footprint. The final slide here just recaps what we are seeking approval for submission to the state. I noted earlier, each of these have gone through our current capital planning process and do represent our top priorities for our academic buildings. That being said, we know we need to think differently about these, but with that, I'd open this up to any questions the board might have.
Mr. Chairman. Curator Chapman, I think, has some. I'm sorry, Phil, I didn't mean to do that to you. I'll get back to you. I couldn't see.
Ryan, I understand we're under a time crunch here, to get these appropriations or get these requests sent over to the legislature. How many capital projects as of today are you aware of system-wide?
Aware of?
Proposed capital projects.
I don't have that number in front of me. Beyond
it's more than 4, though. I guess my point. Oh, go ahead. I guess my point is it's more than 4, which is what we have here. And so I'm wondering, how did we get to the point where these 4 projects were picked? Was each campus asked, what's your number one? What's your number one priority?
Yeah.
How did we get to these 4?
Okay. So we do go through a process that and I think part of it is what we're looking to change is how do we engage the board earlier in that process. We have to go through project justification. It also identifies the operating cost needs for the building, what type of impact it has on our deferred maintenance, what the source of the funding would be. It looks at what the economic impact is. There's also priority criteria that we use, and it again, the scoring doesn't necessarily mean it's a starting point, and then the leadership of the university looks at it and says, does this look right? But it's scored based on the fit with the strategic plan. Does it help address facilities renewal? We also look at a component around infrastructure and functional sustainability, which really means how does it integrate with other buildings we already have on the campus? Does it help us address our space management needs? What type of external funding support is there for the building? What would be the operating cost support needed? And then there is a component that considers the state, regional, and community impact. So we do go through a process to arrive there. I think what we're really looking to change is how do we engage the board early in that process so there's an understanding of what our needs are, and also recognizing that capital is a really long-term commitment for us. And honestly, our capital projects outlive the management team of the board or the management team of the university. And so really looking for the board to be involved in that process is what we're looking to change.
And I we'll see this as we develop our new criteria, for how we select projects. But to me, very high on that list should be maintaining MU's AAU status. The whole system benefits from that, and I just hope that we can, make prioritizations based on that in the future. I just don't see, how at this point. I know there's renovation money we may be trying, or infrastructure money we may be trying to get. So I kind of understand putting a couple renovation projects on here, but I still can't justify this space consolidation and infrastructure at UMSL. It seems as though if we're going to ask for money, to fund our most important projects and those that enhance or enhance MU's AAU status, which helps the whole system. It just seems as though a couple of these, could fall off. Why would we go with 4 when we could go with 2 and at least say, hey, these are our true top priorities, for the system. Let's get this done. Why are we even going with 4 if we could do 2 that are the most important to us?
Can I answer that a little bit from the Ryan, if it's okay with you?
Sure.
Daryl, I think, again, your point is not only a good one, but it's right. Here is the issue and the problem, and I can just speak for myself. I don't believe that our procedure and the process of board involvement has been to the point that we should make that decision at this particular time for this group. Now, that going forward, we're going to try to change that. And part of what we're looking forward to change is that the board, instead of getting 4 of these and having to make decisions, we are actually going to require more effort by the board and involvement by the board, as well as the campus leadership, so that there will be, at least as it's currently drafted, a day-long process by which the finance committee and either other board members will get the information that they need so that we can make exactly the decision that you're talking about, Daryl, which is why I think I think we need to proceed this way today, but your question will be answered in September.
Okay. And one final thing, I don't mean to take up all the time here, but when we start looking at university funds on these slides, it is kind of disappointing to see that we have $0 for shrink for university funds, $0 from UMSL in university funds. What are we doing to improve those numbers? Because we've got to have some. I would think if I was a legislator, I'd want us to have some skin in the game. And it seems as though we have people that we're employing to be raising money or doing whatever we need to do to get the university funds involved. Where are we at in that process? And are we thinking about revamping how we're raising university funds for these projects? It just is a little disturbing to me to see 0 in for a couple of these projects.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and we are going to get to work on that. I think part of it, and maybe something we need to think about going forward, but part of it has been we are typically asking the state for at this point in time for this. If the state, and we did it with the last round of funding we got from the state, they came along and said, well, we can give you some money towards this project, and we were actually able to provide some matching funds. I think what this is really just allowing us to go talk to the state about these projects. And keep in mind, every other four-year institution in the state, we're limited by campus to one project per campus. Every other four-year in the state will be submitting a capital request. We're not sitting here saying that if the state doesn't fund this, we're not going to be doing other things to try to figure these challenges out. But I think my point earlier was when we went back and we looked at our capital appropriations over the last 15 years, none of those have ever came in a period where we really expected it. So we, at this point in time, when we were asking for approval of it, we were sitting here saying, we're making the request, we're not sure the funding is going to show up, and maybe didn't think the likelihood was that high, but then the funding did. And I think I just want to make sure that we want to have a capital request put forward, just on the chance that there might be some type of, if there was flow through that were to come from the federal government through some type of infrastructure bill, we would want to have a request in.
All
Ryan,
right,
this
thanks,
is Curator Farmer. This has to be submitted soon. At what point in time does the state actually make decisions on whether to fund these requests or not? And to Daryl's point, would it be worthwhile to submit this to the state, but add some sort of slide that talks about university funding and a little bit of a plan that we have in place to raise funds to help support these projects? Because I don't know the answer to this, but as the state, is there a higher likelihood for them funding projects when they see there's actual current funds committed against the project?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a good question. So, and I think you're getting to hopefully what my point is. We actually, if you were to approve this, that lets us move forward with how we might go talk to the state, because this wouldn't get appropriated to us really until after the end of the next legislative session. So what it would allow us to do is start to talk to the state about these projects, and start to market it. And if there was interest, we could gauge if they said, well, we really like the UMSL project, but we couldn't fund all of it. What would you be willing to look at matching it? So that really,
give and take.
Yeah, this really allows for us to go start doing that. It doesn't mean that we're just going to submit this request and wait for the state to come along. But this is really just the very beginning of that process.
Well, that's great. I think as curators, if we believe these are our top projects, we're going to want these funded with or without the state. So maybe it would be worthwhile to have a similar presentation to us that shows what we're going to do to raise these funds outside and have a similar plan presented to us. These really are our top initiatives, how we're going to fund them.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's the real challenge we're facing. And I said it at the beginning, is we have we have viewed our academic buildings as solely the responsibility of the state to fund. And that's the challenge we face now, is how do we move from that mindset to where we're looking to the state to try to partner with us, but then also trying to figure out what are the other avenues we have to fund our academic buildings. And to your point, some of that's going to be how do we figure these out with or without state support.
Yeah, and Daryl, I appreciate you bringing up the point you did, and I think I'm hopeful that the task force that's going to come up with the policy that we're going to review, addresses those issues that you've highlighted. I would be very reluctant to submit an appropriations request that did not include all four campuses. I'll tell you why. I thought the retreat highlighted, and I thought Provost Bickelmeyer did a great job of pointing out that, each campus is important to each other campus. and what happens on one campus affects another campus. And I thought that we came out with a real sense of mutuality and collaboration. I would hate not to submit a request from every campus. Some of these requests may be more compelling than others. They all have different stories. And some may be more immediate than others, but all are worthy of submission in one way or another. And I wouldn't want to do anything that would adversely affect the sense and feeling of collaboration and mutuality that we kind of left that retreat with. Because we really need to continue together with that sense that we left that retreat with.
Yeah, this is Jeff. Can I jump in on this? I've got a couple questions. So first of all, I want to thank you guys for not giving us 15 to 20 projects and just say green light these, which in my opinion made no sense, but I guess that's how it was done just short, just a few months ago. So I do appreciate what's happened and with the way you all have thought through this. I have a lot of the same reservations that Daryl does, quite frankly. And I think part of my frustration is what we've done is we've gone from 15 to 20 ideas maybe in the past to 4. And obviously we're up against a deadline here. And I know, and I agree, we do need to submit 4. And I look at TPMC and I think that's where we want to go, right? That's what we want the University of Missouri to be. But my question is, and I think, and I think Curator Steelman hinted at this, and I think Ryan, you did. And again, Ryan and I have talked about this extensively, but I wish we could see, in other words, we want you to prioritize, but we'd like to be involved. So instead of 15 to 20, maybe we've got that 8, maybe there's 2 for each university, and then we're involved in that process. So I fully understand that the federal administration may wrap up a infrastructure bill and send money, and that's a hope. But I also don't think some of these others, and I really am focused on, can we get the money flowing to where our true priorities are? And so I understand we got to have some of these remodels, but to me that just can't be a priority. And one question I have is, how long has Shrink Hall been a priority? How many years?
About 20 years.
Yeah,
so by definition, if it's been a priority for 20 years, it obviously is not really a priority. And I think, we all know that. And again, I'm with Daryl on the skin in the game. I mean, how much money have they raised for Shrink Hall? Is there any? And I'm not trying to be critical of anyone in particular, but I think we narrow this down from 10 to 15, or that committee does, to maybe it's 8 or whatever you all suggest. The finance committee maybe is involved, and the rest of the board in honing that down. And then there has to be some dovetail with raising private funds for these projects. Okay. Well, in my opinion, once we get, these are our priorities, we get some other folks to buy in, and not just depend on the state, and not just, just get everybody working the same direction. So I appreciate what you all are doing. And again, I know we're up against the deadline, and I know we need to submit 4, and I know we need some remodels. But my question is, are these the priorities that'll really move us in the right direction? And I think the TPMC is. I'm not sure if any of the other ones really are.
So, Jeff, this is Moon. In listening to all of the input from the curators, I couldn't agree more about the need of having this study group provide us with some concrete processes and practices so that we get the curators involved early to get their input as we're developing these capital plans. It's also very important for all of us, all of the campuses and the leadership at University Hall, to really identify projects as the highest priorities, which means that beyond just submitting it to the state for support, we have to have a capital campaign project that supports it, so that if we don't receive the funds from the state, we don't say there's no longer a priority and we're going to work on something else. So at the Mizzou campus, the highest priority for fundraising and private-public partnership will be for the TPMC project. And for the other campuses, they're going to have the same approach so that in every venue, whether we're speaking with legislators, donors, or industry partners, we have our highest priority. It's not the highest priority that when it comes to state funding, they're going to be talking about these 4 projects. They're going to be the highest priority. And going back to Curator Chapman's comment about AAU, that is critical. The AAU stature of Mizzou does translate into higher prestige to the other 3 campuses. And we cannot lose that status. That's going to be key. But at the same time, when we have top students who attend our 3 other campuses, they should be provided with the learning environment where they can learn chemistry, biology, or history in the facilities that are comparable to what we would expect for a public research university. So we have some work to do going forward, but your comments are very, very timely and very important.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask this question of Ryan, back to the transitional medicine building. I noticed on your chart you had $150 million in there as that cost. I know that number's moved around over the last year. We've been talking about this a long time. 150, 180, 200 million. How did we finally arrive at the $150 million? And is that a real number, or how did we get there?
So the 150 million that we're asking the state for, part of that is for TPMC, part of that is for renovation or tear down of some other buildings.
Okay.
And I think the latest range, Mark, there's a range that we're looking at on TPMC right now.
So the range depends on exactly how much of the space we complete at the construction stage and how much we leave as shell space. So the programming document creates several options there depending on the fundraising efforts, both with private public partnerships and with the state. So we can get the project off the ground and get it started, but the full completion will take somewhere in the neighborhood of $200 million.
Thank you.
I might ask, Mark, aren't I correct that reprogramming has already begun at the new facility where the nanomolecular is being moved and which is already being looked at as where Dean Laboa and some others can start.
Correct. So we've already started repurposing the old Nano Center. It's not an old building, but the previously supported Nano Center to be the initial stages of programming the TPMC. So 3 deans and multiple department chairs and center directors have already been through the building, and so we can start planning for the recruitments that are going on right now.
Are there any other questions?
No questions.
Okay,
Hello?
I hear somebody. Does somebody have a question?
Yeah, this is John Phillips.
Okay.
No questions. I didn't want my silence to be read as questioning. I just want to commend everybody for the manner in which we're proceeding. David Steelman has also been really adamant about getting this in some logical way of working through it. The devil's going to be in the details, of course, and I fully support what's been said, including President Choi's comments. So I didn't want to tell you I wasn't thinking about it, but I really commend everybody for the work that's been done. This is great.
I just might add real quickly, I am not at all comfortable seeming like the cautious old man on this, but the truth is, beginning with this work study group that Curator Graham formed, and if we get to where we are actually making the changes I believe we'll be making, which I believe will answer the excellent questions by Curators Farmer, Lehman, and Chapman, and get it done that quick, that is not only moving quickly, but in university speed, we will be moving at light speed, or at least pre-Moon Choi light speed. Maybe this is Moon Choi speed. I don't know. But so we really have this ball rolling, I think, in an excellent way. And so could I have a motion and a second from the Finance Committee to recommend to the full board to approve that the president of the University of Missouri System be authorized to submit to the appropriate state offices the university's fiscal year 2019 state capital appropriation request as was presented by Mr. Rapp.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
So moved.
And okay, I got
second
it. How about if I say a motion by Curator Snowden, second by Curator Lehman? Is that agreeable, Jeff?
Okay. Thank you.
Cindy, call the roll, please.
Curator Chapman,
Yes.
Curator Lehman,
Yes.
Curator Snowden,
Yes.
okay. Curator Steelman.
Yes.
Okay. All committee votes in favor.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the president be authorized to submit to the appropriate state offices the University of Missouri's fiscal year 2019 state capital appropriations request as was just passed out of the Finance Committee.
Is there a second?
Somebody for a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Cindy, will you call the roll of the board?
Curator Chapman,
Yes.
Curator Farmer,
Yes.
Curator Graham,
Yes.
Curator Lehman,
Yes.
Curator Phillips,
Yes.
Curator Snowden,
Yes.
Curator Steelman.
Yes. And by the way, Rick Banyek, because I think you've already got factored in what all you heard, but I hope that a lot of these comments today will be factored into our final draft if they're not already.
We'll make sure they are.
Thank you.
Okay. You had all votes in favor.
Motion carried. You want to adjourn your committee?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I guess we have to have a motion and a second to adjourn, don't we? Or do we, Steve? Is that right? I've done this 1,000 times and I'm still forgetting.
You do. It's on the agenda,
Yeah.
so I
How
don't
about-
think it makes that much difference.
Curator Snowden, can I get a motion? We adjourn?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
I'll second that.
Okay. Cindy?
Okay. Curator Chapman,
Yes.
Curator Lehman,
Yes.
Curator Snowden,
Yes.
and Curator Steelman.
Yes.
Okay. All votes in favor.
Okay, thank you, David. We're now into general business, and is there any item for the good and welfare of the board needs to be brought up by any curator? If not, do we have a motion to adjourn this meeting of the Board of Curators?
I'll make that one.
Is there a second?
Nobody wants to go home.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn and a second. Cindy, will you call the roll on adjournment?
And this is adjournment of the public session, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Curator Chapman,
Yes.
Curator Farmer,
Yes.
Curator Graham,
Yes.
Curator Lehman,
Yes.
Curator Phillips,
Yes.
Curator Snowden,
Yes.
Curator Steelman.
Yes.
Okay. All votes in favor.
Okay, the meeting will be adjourned. Thank all of you for your attendance and your the good work done before the meeting. And just don't forget that our next meeting will be September 28th and 29th in Kansas City. Leo will be there with you.
Yes.
And Marcy, are we going into executive session?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, this concludes only the public meeting.
Yes.
Thank you.
So we stay online for the executive session?
Take care.
On the line, we'll clear the rooms, and we'll be back with you momentarily.
Okay.
See you, Tom. Ashley,
Hey, Marcy.
thanks for your good work on that committee. I think it's really appreciated.
No problem.
Thanks, officer.